The public protector confirms that on the 10th of March 2023, a notice was delivered to the affected and implicated persons in the Phala farm investigation. Other headlines: Labour Court will on Monday make a ruling on an appeal by NEHAWU against the court order interdicting a strike by its members. And electioneering in Zimbabwe gathering pace as two major parties select candidates to contest in the upcoming poll. A very good afternoon. If you've just joined us live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, you're watching the Week in Review with myself, Liesl Wilson. It's where we're going to take a look at some of those top stories that have made headlines and also what has kept South Africans talking. So on that note, let's get straight into it. Well, first up, we've seen that ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is leading a visit to KwaZulu-Natal following the party's elective conference in December. During the two-day visit, Ramaphosa is expected to engage with traditional and religious leaders. On that note, let's take you live there now.
So we are humbled and we dip our heads as we walk on this hallowed ground. And once again, we thank the family for giving us this rare moment, this great opportunity for us to be in the presence of a great leader like Chief Albert Luthuli. So thank you very much. And thank you to the provincial leadership for arranging this and the regional leadership as well. This for us is a high moment. It's a high visit for a moment of the visit that I've paid to KwaZulu-Natal. So thank you very much. Nobala, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Mongameli. Sicela ukhombe uMahlengi Mabheki uNational Spokesperson of the ANC ukuthi asibongele amase futhi asuka la siya ukwenzela ukuthi lenzo zekamera sifuna lezilandele silandela nje kushonda president usebenza overtime uyoyiclaim director general okay so 9
I wanted to say, why we claim our president directly to the president's office. But thank you very much to the program director, our provincial secretary, Comrade Mdolo, Gidengelele, wobonke ubuholi obukholwa uka-ANC, obukholwa umongameli wethu, uComrade Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, nosihlalo wesifundazwe bese nosihlalo we-region yethu la eLembe kwaDukuza bese ikakhulukazi ngireserve especially.
As that is transpiring, our reporter Bongani Gema is with the president on that KZN visit, and we'll continue to bring you more developments as it progresses. But for now, as we move on to other stories that made headlines this week, former Tshwane Mayor Murungwa Maguirela is facing criminal charges following his resignation just yesterday. He resigned less than 24 hours after being reinstated as mayor. It comes after it was discovered that he had submitted a fake rehabilitation certificate. Maguirela has also resigned as a member of COPE.
A brief and tumultuous stint at the Helm, elected as Tshwane mayor on the 28th of February, 7 days later, disqualified as councillor and removed as mayor. He was reinstated 2 days later, hours before his exit of shame. Maguirela confidently addressed the media.
The courts are there to test these things, and I think we encourage, in particular, the city manager to also test these things properly so that we don't just come up with knee-jerk reaction and also subject me into media court.
A few hours later, he resigned after submitting a fake rehabilitation certificate to Tshwane City Manager Johan Metler. Metler asked Tshwane's legal team to investigate the legitimacy of the letter. The office of the chief registrar confirmed that the letter was fake.
Dr. Maguirela was not supposed to be a councillor on the 6th of November 2021. The second issue has to do with whether or not are we going to claim all the monies that we had paid to Dr. Maguirela when he was an ordinary councillor and also when he was elected speaker.
The Tshwane multi-party coalition government has opened a fraud case against Maguirela at the Brooklyn police station.
We are also asking for Panyaza Lusufi, who was seen an hour before Maguirela accepted his nomination. He was seen speaking to Maguirela. We are asking him to keep his distance.
We as Action SA are very, very concerned about corruption in any level, and therefore we are taking the stand to come up and do what we are doing at the moment.
Maguirela was nominated by the ATM and voted into power with the help of the EFF, ANC and disgruntled Action SA and DA members. He received 112 votes and beat the multi-party coalition candidate, Sigelelo Breakfast.
We want to ensure that our people get services. So our position is very clear. We want to work with everybody who put the agenda of the people as a priority.
Maguirela has also resigned from the Congress of the People. COPE took a swipe at the multi-party coalition for not exposing Maguirela when he was part of the multi-party coalition.
We are saying what Maguirela have done is totally wrong and it's criminal. But the coalition, must also look at themselves. Why did they hide and accommodate Maguirela for so long? And they never said anything.
The city of Tshwane has expressed concern that the Maguirela scandal has damaged brand Tshwane and says a lot of work needs to be done to restore the metro's integrity. The city of Tshwane has confirmed that the municipality is now seeking legal advice on all decisions taken by Dr. Maguirela as council speaker, as this can now be contested even in a court of law. His PhD might also be probed. Patricia Fasachi, SABC News in Pretoria.
All right, so for more on this, we're going to be joined by political analyst Dr. Sigelelo Breakfast. Very good afternoon to you, Dr. Breakfast. Thank you for your time here on the SABC.
Thank you very much for having me.
So it's been an interesting week. Quite a few stories making headlines on the political front. Let's just start off with with your comments on embattled former Tshwane Mayor Murungwa Maguirela, having now resigned as mayor and a COPE member, citing protection of his integrity. How would you weigh in on what's transpired this week?
Yeah, so obviously there are some gaps in terms of the verification of councillors, speakers, and also mayors and other members of the mayoral committee. So I think the IEC needs to try its level best in terms of breaching those gaps, because they are posing a serious threat to our constitution. And of course, I mean, what he did was way out of line. But at the same time, I think the question that I've been grappling with is, how did he become a speaker in the first place? Never mind him becoming a mayor later on. So the only conclusion I can arrive at is that some people might have been well aware about this matter, but then decided to cover up for him because in the beginning it suited them. And then when he jumped ship, decided to leak the information so that they can embarrass him. Meaning that some people are applying double standards, And again, I mean, I'm not exempting him from the fraud that he committed, which is wrong. But at the same time, also, I'm just taken aback by the posture of some people for keeping quiet in the beginning and only leaking the information later on.
Absolutely. And I think it also opens up the conversation broader, given the dynamics that are unfolding in South Africa and what could possibly, as a scenario, what this could mean for coalition governments. What spotlight is also being shone on that front as we imagine that scenario?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I think there seems to be a gap, and we need to bridge this missing link between coalition arrangements and some provisions of conflict management. And this feeds negatively into service delivery, because at the moment, I mean, there's no political leadership, meaning that there is a slow pace of service delivery, and that is affecting the people on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually my next question, but you've touched on that. So perhaps as we move on from, what transpired in Tshwane this week, we saw the cabinet ministers being sworn in cabinet this week as well. And I just wanted to know, when we look at the newly appointed ministers, we look at the expectations. The minister responsible for electricity, he's set to turn around the fiasco that we've experienced with regards to the energy crisis. What's your take on this reshuffle, and who's come into position?
Yeah, I don't think that it will improve the slow pace of service delivery, simply because I think the president tried to balance, both interests of the factions of the ANC. So he has employed strategies of political survival in order for him to hold on to power by using the reshuffling as a platform to dish out favors to his henchmen in the main in exchange for support. I don't think that we should expect anything good out of that.
I actually wanted to touch on that, the distribution of power within the governing party post the reshuffle. What is being reflected on that front? I'm asking this because I also want to explore the dynamic between the deputy president, Paul Mashatile, and President Cyril Ramaphosa, and how their relationship fares, perhaps as we look at the greater interests of South Africans.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is a tension there because some people, they think that the current deputy president might outmaneuver the president, given the fact that the issue of Phala Phala is still looming large. So if it turns out that, the president is unsuccessful in terms of reviewing the report, it might mean that the current deputy president will take over from him. In fact, I think that his support never wanted him to ascend to that position in the first place. No wonder they wanted to put the resignation of the outgone deputy president on hold. So it's going to be interesting how those issues are going to play themselves out in the near future.
Yes, absolutely. Campaigning is set to kick off around June, July, perhaps 6 months before elections. So on the matter of the Phala Phala report that you just alluded to now, the public protector has now come out and cleared the president on the Phala Phala issue. It was just issued this morning. I just wanted to know, in your thoughts, what that now means going forward for the president, for dynamics with elections, coalitions, etc.
Yeah, I think it's still early days, for us to make the call that he's off the hook. Remember, this thing is still playing itself out in the legal space. It can go either way. So I don't think that we must be too excited and be over the moon about the turn of events of late. So I think we need to adopt the wait and see approach. But I must say that it's good for him to also have been cleared by SARS, that he's tax compliant. But I was taken aback by the other confirmation that the person who bought the buffalo did not comply with the tax laws of the country. I think that was a blow to the president, in my view.
Dr. Breakfast, just very quickly in conclusion. So we've seen the developments unfold. We're looking at this being the month of Human Rights Day, which is going to be commemorated very soon. We're looking at the issues that the country is grappling with at large. Perhaps as the campaign season kicks off very soon, we're seeing some of the pressing issues. What do you think needs to emerge from the ruling party at this point, needs to be displayed as we navigate the way forward?
Yeah, so when you look at the culture of human rights, normally it is broken down into three categories. The political rights, the socio-economic rights, and the third generation rights. But there is a great deal of emphasis on the first generation rights, which is, the political rights. I don't think that we have done much in terms of making sure that, services are rendered to the poorest of the poor and make sure that people can exercise those socio-economic rights. And that is a threat to our democracy.
Dr. Sigelelo Breakfast, thank you for joining us in the SABC, weighing in on some of the top stories that made headlines this week. Again, Dr. Sigelelo Breakfast is a political analyst, and we're really just touching on the embattled former Tshwane mayor's woes that transpired this week. We also saw just recently that the public protector has now cleared President Ramaphosa on the Phala Phala issue. Again, cabinet ministers being sworn in this week after the reshuffle that happened. So lots to talk about as we continue taking a look at some of those stories. We're going to return to President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is in KZN. Our reporter Bongani Gema is standing by, and he's obviously going to be bringing us the latest there.
it's going to be really limited. We're chasing the next. So let's keep it 1.5 seconds. Very quickly. Yes, my
Your
sister.
reaction to the preliminary report from the PP's office that's clearing you, Kalapaka?
Well, I suspected you would be asking me. I've noted the report, and that's about all I can say. In terms of the public protector's rules, once a preliminary report has been issued, the less said, the better, because she still has to issue a final report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President. The next question is my sister.
Mr. President, the DPSA report on being able to cut down your cabinet has been on your desk for quite a while, yet we have one of the most expensive cabinets that we're paying ministers for and declining service delivery. Why do we still have so many ministers?
Well, I did explain when I became president, we had 34 ministries. I reduced that to 28. And the objective, as I said, including what is set out in that public service report, it is essentially a public service report. We still need to continue with the proper executive reconfiguration of the executive. And this is work that is underway. My objective is to reduce the executive even much further down. Right now, as I explained in Parliament, we are dealing with an existential challenge. Electricity, load shedding is a major problem to me and is also a major problem to the people of South Africa. And I've wanted greater focus and a minister who is just focused on making sure that we get rid of load shedding and do nothing else but just that. And I've also wanted a minister who will make sure that we implement the plans and the priorities that we have. So I've added 2. But I've also said that is transitory. It is going to be a limited time increase of ministers. Beyond that, when the 7th administration, which the ANC is going to be leading once again, we are going to be reconfiguring government to bring it down. I've already given indications as to the direction we're going. For instance, the Ministry of Public Enterprises is going to end because the various entities that are housed in that ministry are going to revert back to their departments as decided by the conference of the ANC, but which is also very much in line with my own broad planning of how government should be structured. And there are other departments that need to be merged, and that will further reduce the number of ministries. So what we are dealing with now is a short-term, limited time, a process of getting us out of this rut. We are in a rut right now. We need to get out, and I need more hands that are going to enable me to do that. And of course, the opposition is against this. But we have to govern. I have a responsibility as the president to make sure that the ANC governs, and it governs in a way that will take the country forward.
Good luck to those who started first. We have run out of time. I know you wish to speak some more, but we'll catch up as we proceed over the president's 2-day
Yes.
Right, so those are some questions from President Cyril Ramaphosa just on the back of him leading a visit to KwaZulu-Natal. This obviously follows the party's elective conference that concluded in December. Again, we're just hearing some of the pertinent issues that he was addressing. So we'll leave it there for now. That is happening throughout the day, and we'll continue to bring you more coverage as it unfolds. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Week in Review continues with myself, Liesl Wilson. Other stories making headlines now. Economic Freedom Fighters leader Julius Malema will today take part in the party's National Andries Tatane cleanup campaign in the Western Cape. The party says that this is in response to the failures of the government on service delivery. As we know, the EFF named the cleaning campaign in honor of the late Andries Tatane, where Tatane was shot and killed by police officers at a police delivery demonstration for water in Vicksburg in the Free State, which occurred back in 2011. So perhaps for this and more, we cross to SABC News reporter Vanessa Puna. Vanessa, good afternoon. Thank you for your time. Perhaps you can give us an update on developments on your end.
Yes, Liesl, good afternoon to you. And we're standing right in front of the Delft South Primary School. The area that you see behind me, of course, is an area renowned for dumping. And this is why the EFF here in Cape Town have told us they've come out today as part of the Andries Tatane campaign to clear up the community. But let me bring in now the EFF spokesperson, Snau Tambo. Snau, good afternoon to you. We caught you here tail-ending the cleanup campaign at Delft South just outside Delft South Primary School. Tell us a bit more of this campaign. You were talking about the 10-year commemoration and also what's expected to carry on for the next Saturdays for the rest of this year.
Absolutely. So the EFF has adopted the Andries Tatane cleanup campaign in honor of Andries Tatane, who was murdered in Vicksburg, the Free State, for demanding service delivery. So as we turn 10 years as an organization, we're going back to our roots. We're honoring Andries Tatane, who was killed for demanding service delivery. And we're doing this by adopting this campaign, where every Saturday, all structures of the EFF, all public representatives of the EFF and its leadership go to the ground, go into our communities and clean up dumping sites, sewage sites, clean up clinics and provide assistance in terms of service delivery all across the country. So it was launched in Sebokeng, and we're continuing all across the nation to ensure that our people, it's impressed upon them that they need to clean up after their own communities.
So now we spoke just now. We were expecting to see Mr. Malema taking part in this cleanup campaign. We understand you said that he could not make it for this one. Talk to us a bit about your message to communities. Just now you were talking about children playing in the rubble. You were talking about the possible health issues. Tell us what your core message to communities will be as you proceed with this campaign.
Look, our message to our communities is that no one is going to rescue them but themselves. So we know that we're in these situations and in these townships because of apartheid spatial planning. But that doesn't mean we must allow these places to become rotting places where our children play with rats, they play in rubbish and expose themselves to various health hazards. So our people cannot wait for the Democratic Alliance to come and clean up their communities. The Democratic Alliance tried to hijack this campaign by cleaning in Kruger to where the EFF is supposed to go, whereas they know that the situation has been dire there for years. So we're trying to say to our people, you have to defend yourselves against the health hazards of illegal dumping and sewage spillages, and the EFF is going to be there, part and parcel of those efforts to clean up these communities.
So now, just now also spoke to you about the planned shutdown. You weren't going to divulge too much information, but talk to us a bit about what can be expected. I mean, you were talking about Cape Town and the Western Cape not being exempt from the plans by the EFF to shut down. Talk to us a bit about that.
Absolutely. So there's not going to be a single truck operational, no business will operate, no road will operate on that day. On the 20th of March, it's Freedom Day. We're demanding the return of electricity in our country, which has been crippled by darkness, and our economy is suffering as a result of that. And we're demanding the resignation of Ramaphosa, who is presiding the complete collapse of South Africa in all various spheres of society. Crime is at an all-time high, unemployment is at an all-time high, service delivery is non-existent, our people are unemployed, gender-based violence is making women live in complete fear in this country. So we're going to shut down this country, and the city of Cape Town is not exempt, because here gangsterism is rife, it is here where unemployment is rife, it is here where we live in a province where there are two societies, a white one and a black one. A white one where people have flushing toilets, and a black one where people use porta-pottas and live with filth such as we've seen here in Delft next to a school. So the city of Cape Town is not exempt, and the lie and the myth that they're the best run city in the country is going to be exposed when our people in Gugulethu, in Nyanga, in Delft and all across the province go into the streets and shut down this province.
Where to from here, back to this campaign, Snau? Will the EFF take this cleaning up campaign? We understand that you're here in Delft today. Where next?
Look, the presence of the EFF here today was because the Commander-in-Chief was set to lead the campaign. Unfortunately, was held up in some other engagements. But of course, the fact that the campaign was ran successfully today is representative of the fact that the EFF is not dependent on the existence of an individual, but we're a collective that is able to execute a mandate that is given to us by our Commander-in-Chief, even in his absence when he's held up in various engagements. So it's an ongoing campaign all across the country. As we speak, every Saturday, everywhere in this country, every city, every township, there's a cleaning campaign. It's being led by the SG in KwaZulu-Natal, in eThekwini, in Mpumalanga by the TG, and in various areas of our society and in our country. Public representatives of the EFF are on the ground cleaning sites such as the one that we saw at Delft here today. So it's going to be ongoing for the rest of the year and hopefully continuously until the EFF takes government and is able to provide decent services and waste collection to our people.
Now, Tambu, thank you very much for your time. Of course, speaking to us there, the EFF spokesperson here on the ground in Delft, in Cape Town at the moment, talking to us about the Andries Thutani cleanup campaign and also then throwing forward, Liesl, there to the planned shutdown, which is scheduled to take place on the 20th of March. But of course, listening to Snao Tambu just now saying that this campaign will be taken to every corner of South Africa every Saturday in different municipalities, in different provinces for the remainder of this year in celebration of the EFF's 10th year of existence and also in honour of Andries Thutani.
Vanessa, if you can hear me, I've just got one more question perhaps that you can pose to Sinao at this time. You're just wanting to know if the EFF has any comments or updates just on the back of the public protector now having cleared President Cyril Ramaphosa of any wrongdoing regarding the Phala Phala scandal. Perhaps you could just get a comment from them as you're standing there.
Let me do just that, Liesl. Just a request then for a comment from the EFF following the president being cleared by the public protector. What is the message or the response or reaction of the EFF?
It's nonsensical. It took them over 9 months to release that report. Advocate Galega in particular, who is the acting public protector, has been sitting on it and has released a nonsensical finding. I mean, just a preliminary review. We know that Wali Roda, who was the general in which Cyril Ramaphosa claims to have reported the crime to, is not a law enforcement agency. So you don't report a crime to an individual and think that is a case that has been registered, number one. Number two, she wants to pin the rogue investigation which was done by Wali Roda in terms of kidnapping suspects, bribing them, utilizing state resources and communication interceptors to Wali Roda alone. Whereas we know Wali Roda would never operate without a direct mandate from his principal, who is Cyril Ramaphosa. So she has fallen maybe deliberately into the trap of scapegoating Cyril Ramaphosa's employees for the crimes he's committed. And that is what Ramaphosa does. The money which was handed over at Phala Phala Farm was handed over to his employees so that he can have palpable, deniable plausibility of having been part and parcel of money laundering and keeping illicit financial money. The money was put in mattresses and sofas by his employees, so he can be able to deny it. He sent Pejani Chauke to see the president of Namibia, Geingob, and try and negotiate the apprehension of those suspects because he doesn't want his hands to be dirty. So that is how he operates. And to exempt him from the criminal activities of his underlings and those under his employ is completely nonsensical. And it's clear now why Galega sat on this report for so long. She's contradicting esteemed judges and a former Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court because she's a hired gun. She was brought into that office to put Phala Phala under the rug, and they were not going to allow it. We expected her to come with such a nonsensical outcome, and it's a blessing in disguise that she's only acting. And the sooner she gets removed from that office, the better.
Now, Tambu, thank you very much for speaking to us. Of course, Liesl, there, the reaction from the EFF to the question you posed to us just now. And we are coming to you live from Cape Town, Delft South in particular, where the EFF had just concluded their cleanup campaign taking place every Saturday for the rest of this year.
Thank you very much for that update, Vanessa Puna. Perhaps as we move on from another story now, we've seen that the Labour Court will make a ruling on an appeal by NEHAWU against the court order interdicting a strike by its members come Monday. Workers have been blocking access to health facilities countrywide over the past 5 days, despite this interdict. So they have now rejected government's 3% increase and are demanding 10%.
Striking NEHAWU members remain resolute and are calling for public sector workers to unite behind their strike action as they accuse the employer of intimidation tactics. Their matter was in the Labour Appeals Court while workers continued with their demonstrations.
NEHAWU notes the decision by the Labour Court to reserve judgment on our appeal. The judgment will be delivered on Monday, the 13th of March. In this regard, our national leadership will be meeting over the weekend and will provide an update to our members and the broader public in a press conference that will be convened on Sunday.
Operations have been disrupted at various health facilities countrywide, with Gauteng Health MEC Nomantunko Maralehuko visiting the Telle Maguirela Hospital in Vosloorus, one of the facilities badly affected by the strike action.
At least 80% of operations are back. The situation has more or less stabilized across the province, and we have put in place some measures to obviously intervene. One of the measures was that we managed to get a court interdict, and that court interdict obviously is not about the issue of whether the strike must continue or not, but it's about the nature of the strike in terms of ensuring that those that want to come to work and be able to work are not intimidated. Members of the public who need to access our facilities are not prevented from doing so, but also that property is not damaged. And we've also released a team of people from across from head office, even from national, who have been dispatched across our facilities to go and provide additional support. You would have seen the Minister of Health came down yesterday together with other officials, and we have deployed, even here at Telle Maguirela where we are, we have deployed officials to be able to assist at the different areas of the hospitals.
Law enforcement authorities have also been deployed to some of Gauteng's health facilities.
There has already been engagement with the Provincial Police Commissioner and the senior management of the SABC in Gauteng. Insofar as that particular interdict is concerned, it's very specific that it says intimidation, the police must intervene. It says there must be law and order. It says there must not be damage to property, and there must not be undue or unauthorized entry into facilities where people come in and they get into facilities and they disrupt, because we've had incidences in other facilities where unknown people will just come in, others wearing balaclavas, and maybe try to intimidate staff that is actually working there.
The NEHAWU workers say not even the presence of police outside the health facilities will disrupt their course. They're now looking for a favorable judgment on Monday at the Labour Appeals Court. This as the Gauteng Health Department has sought to assure patients that they are in control of the ongoing situation at the province's health facilities. Katlego Logodi, SABC News, outside the Telle Maguirela Hospital.
All right, so for more analysis on the ongoing nationwide strike by members affiliated to NEHAWU, we're joined by Mark Bagram, a Labour analyst. A very good afternoon to you. Mark, thank you for your time here at the SABC.
Thank you. It's Michael, but thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michael. Apologies.
No problem. My dad was Mark.
Okay, well, we've honored your dad. But Michael, let's just look at the ongoing strike that's been happening by NEHAWU members. And, obviously taking place across the country over the past 5 days, despite the interdict. So what does this mean when there's a court interdict in place, but workers continue to embark on a strike?
Well, the reality is they shouldn't have been on strike in the first place, because most of them are essential workers. And that's a workplace which is known as an essential workers workplace. You can't go and take policemen, for instance, on strike, or the army on strike, or health workers. And so the strike itself is fruit from a poison tree. But what the court said in this particular instance is that they can't stop doctors coming in, nurses coming in, and indeed patients coming in. So what the court was doing was not ordering that the strike, they didn't even turn to whether the strike was legal or not, because that's another issue for another day. But the court said that you can't do that. And of course they can't do that. And I don't believe that the union will be successful by any means in this. But the reality is what we're seeing on the ground is that the workers and the unions don't seem to care whether a court says you can or can't, whether the law says you can or can't. And what's even more interesting is the complete absence of the police. They didn't stop any of that nonsense. There were people filming, for instance, a patient being dragged out of an ambulance. The police were nearby. They did nothing. The army did nothing. The only people who seemed to be taking some sort of action was private security, and they're very thin on the ground as it is. The hospitals can't afford lots of private security. So there seems to be a complete recklessness. It's almost like a scorched earth. They don't seem to care at all. And quite frankly, I blame government in this whole exercise. Government has completely destroyed the trust relationship between themselves and the unions. They've completely destroyed any semblance of wanting to have fair negotiation. And I think the unions are desperate. Well, we know that the staff, the strikers, are absolutely desperate. And the only way they seem to be gaining some sort of media attention is by doing things that are illegal, immoral, and wrong. And of course, the public have condemned them completely. But you've got to understand where this comes from, and you've got to understand the desperation that has led people to do this. Health workers are not just workers. They're people who are doing it out of passion, and they've got a calling for health work. I mean, nurses have a calling for this, and they've now been forced to actually damage the hospitals, the very institution that is supposed to save people.
Yeah, well, son of Mark Bagram, Michael, on the back of what you've just echoed now, I mean, we're looking at the negotiation process, and now they have rejected the 3% that the employer unanimously implemented last year. Now the talks have resumed. Should we be hopeful?
Well, look, the real problem we've got, we need to just have a look what happened in the transport strike. You remember at the ports and harbours where there was a 3%, and then as soon as the strike happened, it turned ugly. Government was suffering, they were bleeding badly. And despite the fact that they don't have the money to pay the 6%, they caved in and gave it. And this gives a cue to the unions right now, to NEHAWU. It gives a cue saying, well, our brothers at the ports demanded 6%, well, they actually demanded 10 initially. They were offered 3, and they eventually got the 6 because they were nasty. So, you know, government is now in a situation where they need those workers to vote for the governing party. That's what the desperation is. It's the right time for unions to strike now because the government is in a corner and they're desperate. And of course, what will happen is they'll do what they did to the unions 4 years ago, where they reneged. They signed an agreement, they shook hands, they all hugged each other, they walked out. I remember watching that footage on the station when they signed that agreement. And what happened? On the 3rd year, they said, well, we don't have the money, we found a loophole, we're not paying you. So what government did was duplicitous, was wrong. And of course, they lied to the trade unions. And I think the trade unions have now woken up to this fact that government does lie to them. Never mind the tripartite alliance. That's just a piece of paper. Government does what suits them. And if they have to, they'll agree to the 6% because they need that vote for the elections. The day after the elections, you'll see that breached.
So with workers demanding 10% increase, which is obviously way above the inflation rate, which is standing at 6.9%, in your opinion then, is their demand justifiable?
Well, yes and no. It's a very difficult situation. It's justifiable to the extent that they're saying, well, you as government, you stole most of the money. If you didn't steal, if you didn't have cadre deployment, if you didn't have fraud and all the nonsense that Judge Zondo pointed out to us, if that wasn't there, you would have had the money. We're also saying is that we haven't had an increase now. And we know that the food basket has gone up by 8-9%, and we're going backwards. So there's justifiable. They're saying we're going backwards. We're earning less every single year. Oh, it's justifiable from government who's saying we just don't have the money. You know, whether we stole it or whether someone else stole it, that's irrelevant. It's not there. So it's between a rock and a hard place. The problem that we've got now is that the unions have blotted their copybook because the public are saying, we've seen these horrible scenes. We've seen doctors trying to come to work. You're stopping them. We've seen nurses desperate to get to work. You're stopping them. There's fighting all around. I don't know if you saw, but there was even a fight between the teachers union and NEHAWU because NEHAWU went and tried to force the teachers union to break up their meeting to join the NEHAWU strike. So there's fighting amongst the unions themselves. And then you get a president who doesn't seem to have a backbone who said, well, what punishment is there going to be? And he said, there'll be no work, no pay. It's like saying if you jump in the water, you might get wet. I mean, I don't know where that came from.
Michael, just in conclusion, based on the sentiments you've echoed, I mean, We've seen 3 days after the strike, Dr. Joe Phaahla, the health minister, conducted site visits to the affected health facilities, but the strike was not or has not yet been called off. What is being reflected within that dynamic? And given the dynamics that are unfolding, you spoke about the desperation, you spoke about the violence. What is your worst fear at this point?
Well, our worst fear is scorched earth, that people are saying, well, we've got nothing left to lose. And just to comment on the health minister, Joe Phaahla, he was absent. He was absent at the height of the strike. He's just been reappointed. You would expect him to come as a new broom and try and sweep clean. But he saw it was a bit nasty and he stayed in his office with the door locked. Now he comes out as things are starting to calm down a little bit. They're not completely off, but they have calmed down. So now he comes out. The same with the Minister of Police. The Minister of Police is always well known to pitch up after the event and to say, we're going to do the best over here. But here he didn't even pitch up at all. And then, of course, the Minister of Labour, Employment and Labour, also didn't pitch up. So you've got three ministries that actually stayed very cleanly at home. They were probably all on holiday together in Mauritius, but they didn't come to the strike when things were really going wrong.
Michael Bagram, thank you for your time in the SABC, weighing in on the ongoing strike, the nationwide strike by members affiliated to NEHAWU. Michael Bagram, a Labour analyst, weighing in on the back of that. So we'll continue with more news. Upon our return, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Week in Review continues. In other news now, Gauteng's most vulnerable residents, particularly the elderly and orphans, may be facing a bleak future. This comes after the Gauteng Social Development reduced non-profit organizations' budget by 83.4 million rand. The DA in Gauteng says that according to the department, this was due to non-compliant MPOs and service level agreements that were not signed. But one organization in Winterveld, north of Pretoria, is now legally challenging the Social Development Department to make a payment of over 800,000 rand within 30 days. The department says the NPO has no approved building, which is what is holding up the completion of its funding application.
There are more than 270,000 non-profit organizations registered with the Social Development Department. Whilst caring for millions of vulnerable citizens, some are experiencing funding cuts amidst a struggling economy. Yabana village in Winterveld hasn't been receiving funds since last October. It's been relying on donations and sponsors, but it's not enough for the children it caters for, including those from the surrounding community. But the provincial department says the NPO has no valid registration certificate due to outstanding documents.
We received 2 or 3 more children from social workers from the Department of Social Development. So we still receive children. We have to take care of them in an unregistered facility and without their funding. So, but as I say, we've submitted our documents to the municipality in 2017 again. So that's still outstanding, and what must we do now?
According to the department's third quarter report of the year under review, the budget for the program supporting older persons and community-based care organizations has been decreased by over 42 million rand, whilst the one dealing with children and families was reduced by 40 million rand, which in total amounted to 83.4 million rand that's been taken away.
The department claims that the MPOs are misusing the funds and now have taken a blanket approach to punish all MPOs, instead of applying consequence management to those who are actually abusing the funds. Where would our vulnerable children and older persons be if the MPOs closed down?
Engelbrecht says instead of the department punishing the NPOs for non-compliance, they should be engaging with the municipalities to institute waivers for these organizations to reduce the complicated compliance regulations. Human rights activists say government has the responsibility to continue supporting these organizations.
Many of these organizations, if you may, are staffed by committed individuals who continue to deliver services to communities, even when the state does in fact remove its financial support and its financial backing. This is patently unfair and places additional burdens on persons who are already in distress. The state should, in this case, fulfill its commitments and restore its financial support to these community-based organizations.
Department officials, however, said in a telephonic text message that the onus to be compliant with rules and regulation of non-profit organizations lies with individual NPOs. They indicated that funding may only be considered for fully compliant organizations. Mulimwane Motwa, SABC News, Winterveld.
Meanwhile, some bus commuters in Pampierstad in the Northern Cape have expressed concern about their safety on the road. They say that buses affiliated to Pomatra Transport Enterprise are unroadworthy and are always involved in accidents.
These angry residents and commuters say they have had enough of these buses and demand that they be removed from the roads. 43-year-old Lesego Owesi says she is lucky to be alive after she was injured while in one of the buses when the bus overturned in November last year.
There was an accident last year in November. The bus was from Hartswater to Pampierstad. The bus overturned and the people were injured. My arm was broken. We are scared because our children are using these buses.
The buses provide transport to commuters and scholars from 16 villages around Pampierstad. They also transport commuters to the Northwest Province.
I would like Pomatra to repair buses so that we must feel safe when we are taking our trips.
Police were deployed in the area after local association members affiliated to Santago planned to prevent buses from operating.
And we stopped another bus there, and then Harikanamu, another Christianally highly district was unroadworthy. We stopped the road until the traffic officers come.
We stand for universal, safe, reliable and affordable transport.
Meanwhile, Pomatra Transport Enterprise has refuted allegations about the poor state of their buses.
No, it's not. I don't deny that. We had only one accident last year on the 4th of November. And only 3 people were seriously injured. And that matter has been referred to our lawyer, our company lawyer, and RAF. So we are still addressing that issue.
Commuters have threatened to prevent buses from operating if their safety demands are not addressed. Tabiso Khadebe, SABC News in Pampierstad, Northern Cape.
Moving on to KZN, nature conservation body Mzimvelo, KZN Wildlife is plotting a smart fence at the Shlushluwe Mfolozi Park, where it's hoped that it will help reduce rhino poaching and prevent wildlife from escaping. Just last year, the province reported the highest number of rhino poach in the country, sitting at 224. Most of them were at the Shlushluwe Mfolozi Park.
Intense rhino poaching in the 1900s forced the Shlushluwe Mfolozi Park to face a harsh reality. It had less than 100 southern white rhino left. One intensive Save the Rhino campaign later, and the park regained its status as a sanctuary for these critically endangered animals. Now authorities are taking on the very same battle a second time. It's being targeted by sophisticated criminal syndicates that have earmarked it as South Africa's newest rhino poaching hotspot.
As there have become fewer rhino in Kruger and as there has been tightened security operations, then obviously poachers want to move to areas where there are more rhino available and also where in their perception there is lesser security interventions. So I think that is what has driven this situation. And that's why we think it's very important that we work together, because we are dealing in this situation with the same syndicates that were working in Mpumalanga.
The Smart Fence pilot project currently only covers a fraction of the 162-kilometer perimeter. But boots on the ground say it's already making a difference. A complete rollout will, however, require a significant investment.
One of the interesting innovations that have been piloted here is the so-called smart fence that not only is electrified to prevent animals from escaping, but also can detect human movement along the boundary. And we want to see whether there's any possibility that we could support some of that installation going forward.
In recent months, the dilapidated fence has also seen the escape of big game into neighboring communities. Not only has this endangered the animals themselves, but residents and their livestock. Efforts to curb tensions are ongoing, creating jobs and establishing clear lines of communication through traditional structures.
We have appointed about 90 fence liners from the communities, people who are monitoring the fence. If there are any holes, they patch it. And also we've met with Amakosi, we've met with the Zinduna, we've met with the core management structures to solicit their support in terms of making sure that the community people, they support us in terms of not interfering with the fence, and also helping us when there are poachers who wants to reside in their areas in order to be able to access the park.
Barely 2.5 months into 2023, KwaZulu-Natal has already lost 36 rhinos for their horn. Minoshni Pillay, SABC News, Hluhluwe.
While the week in review continues, we're going to take a look at news-making headlines further afield now. We've seen that electioneering in Zimbabwe is gathering pace as the two major parties select candidates to contest within the upcoming poll. The governing ZANU-PF plans to hold its primary elections on the 18th of March, while the main opposition, the Citizens Coalition for Change, led by Nelson Chamisa, says that it has already begun identifying candidates. Over 5 million Zimbabweans are registered to vote. The country's electoral body is planning a voter registration drive from Sunday until the 21st of this month.
Both the ruling ZANU-PF and the main opposition, Triple C, are leaving nothing to chance as they prepare for the crucial elections scheduled for the second half of this year. Both parties announced they are undertaking the process of candidate selection for their respective parties. However, the opposition says it will keep its party's election strategies under wraps for fear of infiltration by ZANU-PF.
The party manifesto must be finalized as the other critical aspects related to our internal election roadmap unfold. We as ZANU-PF will begin our internal elections, primary elections, from next week.
We've already started the process of radically transforming how we choose our candidates. Candidates are going to be chosen by you, not by leaders. By you, not by the leader. You in your community, tell us who is the best representative in terms of integrity, honor, accountability, accessibility, and also visibility.
Chamisa has been heavily criticized for a lack of strategy or leadership and accused of folding hands while some of his members, including Job Sekala, languish in prison. Chamisa claims he has reached out to President Mnangagwa, but his overtures have been ignored.
I've even made the effort to write severally to Mr. Mnangagwa to say, deal with this color issue. It's embarrassing us internationally and nationally. He has chosen not to respond.
Chamisa and his party suffered another electoral setback early this week when High Court of Zimbabwe threw away an application by one of his party members, Norman Mackham, to be granted access to an electronic voters' roll, citing that this would compromise the security of the roll. However, the youthful leader says this will not deter them from participating in the polls. Kylie Khumalo, SABC News.
That's where we leave it for you today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Tomorrow we're back for a look at the week ahead. From myself and the team, until then, it is goodbye for now.